Sì. Volevo fare una domanda per Robert Downey e volevo chiedergli che cosa lo ha attirato di questo personaggio, che cosa gli è piaciuto, come lo ha affrontato e se nella vita ha mai pensato o desiderato di poter indossare un'armatura e affrontare il mondo.
I'll answer the first 9 questions first. I don't know, I mean, I'm kind of simple, you know. I went to the Marvel headquarters and looked at all these posters of Spider-Man and X-Men. And then at the end of the hall, there's John, and we started talking about Iron Man. And I left her and I thought, you know what, I should really do one of these. And they didn't necessarily agree, but John and I started talking. I was in New York and he was in LA, and we started having these conversations, and we kind of really got to know each other. So anyway, there was a screen test, and I wound up doing fairly well at that. Terence was actually, you were already on board, weren't you? They had already talked to Terence about being in it, but I think for the 3 of us, I'll just talk briefly on behalf of the talent. It's like, you know, Gwyneth or Mr. Howard and myself, you know, we pour our hearts into these characters and roles, and then they come out 6 or 9 months later, and 18 people see them. And we had kind of agreed that we'd like to do good movies that will also be able to have a wide audience and try to bring that sentiment to a movie like Iron Man. Seemed really fun, you know? What do you think, Howard?
Yeah. And in lieu of what he's saying, you know, 90% of the films you do as an actor, Jon Favreau did a part of this. Half of the time your films are rarely seen because, you know, the labors of love never seem to have the marketability. So it's wonderful when you're able to combine the labor of love with wonderful actors like Jeff Bridges and this entire cast, and then ultimately people to enjoy it and for it to make money. You know, it's the best of both worlds, basically.
Per Robert, lei era il nostro eroe anche prima di vestire questi panni. Siccome è il primo eroe della storia che è affascinante, corto e intelligente, volevo sapere quanto ha avuto modo di collaborare alla sceneggiatura. Grazie.
Oh my God. I'm glad you noticed. Pretty much every morning, and John will attest to this, I would come and John had this trailer. I would come to the trailer, I would take the script, throw it across the room. John would say, "Good morning, Robert." I say, "Good morning, John." He'd say, "I take it you don't think that the script for today is very good. Would you like to perhaps rewrite it?" I'd be sitting there. Then Gwyneth would come in and be like, "Oh my God, are you guys doing this again? Are we going to shoot before lunch?" And Terence would come in and
Jeff Bridges would have prepared the script, his scene in the script for 2 months because he likes to prepare. He doesn't like change.
Yeah.
So Robert would come in with new pages, and Jeff would have all his lines memorized and his notes on the other side of his script. And that was my job as a director, was to balance all of these different styles of performing.
And then Terence would say, "Listen, I think the Department of Defense is going to have a problem if Tony Stark and Rhodey are drinking on the plane, but I found out that as long as it's, listen, I think the Department of Defense is going to have a problem if Tony Stark and Rhodey are drinking on the plane, but I found out that as long as it's 12 hours bottle to throttle, we can make the military happy." And I go, "Great, so we can drink in the scene, right?" And he's going, "Listen, Downey." So, and we talked a lot about how we wanted to not just do this, but in the off chance that it had the kind of reception that we're finding it does, then how can we set things up so we can carry them to another level if we get to do a couple more of these? You know, we take it real serious. It was funny. I felt like we were doing, you know, $150 million independent movie, which is, I think, why some of our sensibilities really were able to be, you know, to bear fruit.
Yeah.
le mani.
Neil, as a Norwegian, can you fix the technological problem we're having here? I know you guys are up to some cutting edge stuff there.
Thank you for the compliment. I have a question about the heroes in the movie. We now see many movies dealing with heroes and heroes awakening, and also in the trailer of these movies it says that heroes are not born, they are made. So what do you think about this topic? I think this question goes to the director and to Robert. And also, I have another question for all you in the panel. Did you read comic books when you were children? Or are you still reading them?
I'll start with the easy part of the question, which is, are heroes made or are they born? I think that the more compelling version, clearly in comic books you have two different types of stories. One is when magical powers arrive magically on the hero. A spider bites a person, a gamma ray hits them, and then they find themselves with these powers and they have to figure out how to deal with them. To me, the more compelling story, the more ancient myth is the story of the coming of age of somebody who decides to become a hero. They go through some challenges or a change or are awakened on a spiritual level, and then the metaphor for that reawakening becomes this new heroic persona that they take on. And in the case of Iron Man, it goes beyond that because he has no superpowers. He actually builds a suit. He reinvents himself. And in the case of this movie, he actually changes his heart, literally. And that was as a filmmaker, it was a very simple, specific storyline to cling to as we made the movie more complex with improvisation, comedy, and special effects.
That's a very good answer.
Did anybody read comic books growing up?
No.
Terence?
I read Hustler comics.
That'll take a minute and then you'll laugh.
No, I read X-Men comics when I was younger, and a little bit of Spider-Man. For the most part.
We would just keep thinking about scenes like this, like there's this big action sequence where Rhodey and Tony, Rhodey's realizing that Tony might be, and then there's this fight with these F-22 Raptors, and it tends to be the parts in movies where my brain turns off because I know that the effects houses are now doing everything, and maybe there's some ADR, and so we often talk about how to keep the relationships alive and how to keep some humor and repartee in it, and simultaneously, and Gwyneth hasn't actually seen the movie in its finished form, but I'm really looking forward to sitting near her when there's the scene where she comes down and Tony asks her how big her hands are, and then they have this kind of wild scene that you wouldn't expect to see in a movie like this that's so metaphoric for what they mean to each other, and yet it's this thing where she's changing his heart for him. And I'm hoping that what we really did was we built our own version of how to tell a story like this, and it kept coming back to these really simple truths about relationships and finding out who we are and who each other are and trying to reconcile that.